Good morning, students. Today we can continue our Cellulose chapter. Today we are going to start with coral and coral reefs. Coral. This word is, I think, is familiar to you all. Corals, very beautiful, appears like a garden-like region that we can see near the shore regions of ocean beaches. Anyways, very attractive to see, and today we are going to learn about the corals. And these corals are certain non-living substances. It is secreted by polypoid coelentrates. Listen to that term. Polypoid coelentrates secretes these corals. And this polypoid coelentrates then lives inside this skeleton. That skeleton is actually secreted by this polypoid coelentrate. And most of the coelentrates that is secreting these corals comes under the class Anthozoa, and also a few members come under Hydrozoa also secretes corals. And each single unit inside the coral is called corallite. And this corallite is actually the house of polyps. And inside that space, these polyps are residing and hiding and escaping from its predators. And what all hostile condition, it escape inside, retract inside, and find a very protective environment inside this corallite. So corallite is the home of the polyps. And these corals are made by these tiny polyps. And this, I think you all know, whether you forget or not. Anyway, polyps appearance is almost like the sea anemone's structure. Sea anemone means sea anemone structure. I will show you an image of sea anemone. This is a sea anemone. Similar to this appearance are these polyps that are secreting the corals. That's coral secreting polyps have this sort of appearance. And this is mouth, this is tentacle, this is its column, and this is the basal plate. Using this part, this animals attaches with the substrate. This is a column, this is a pedal disc, basal or basal plate, tentacles, and the mouth. Okay. So we are going to understand more about that. This polypoid coelentrates. We'll show you another slide. This is the one. These polyps are tiny animals that we know. Okay, they grow and die inside the limestone skeleton. Why it's called limestone? Limestone skeleton means that coral. That coral is chemically it is calcium carbonate. Okay, and that calcium carbonate is secreted by the polyp itself. Okay, so that polyp die inside where? Inside that limestone skeleton secreted by themselves. And associated with that polyp in that skeleton, we can see some type of algae. That algae are called Zooxanthellae. And so, in that aspect, we can tell a coral reef is an assemblage of that coral polyp plus Zooxanthellae. In this picture, you can see that algae. This is the Zooxanthellae. It's imparting a greenish coloration for the corals. So, it is a symbiotic relationship. Symbiotic means both the partners are benefited out of that relationship. Okay, both the partners means the polyp and Zooxanthellae. Then, what is the role? What is the importance of Zooxanthellae? This Zooxanthellae give nutrient, nourishment for the polyp. How? This Zooxanthellae do photosynthesis, and by that way it give nourishment for the coral. This is the benefit that polyp obtain from the algae. At the same time, what benefit give this polyp to that Zooxanthellae? It give with a protected environment to live for this Zooxanthellae, and also give a steady supply of carbon dioxide for its photosynthesis. This is that association. So, Zooxanthellae also we need to learn and understand while learning about these corals. Then what's the actual use, what's the purpose of secreting this calcary skeleton? Only in order to get protection from all type of hostile environment for these polyps. Hostile means inconvenient circumstances, that is hostile. Then another term we need to familiarize. Familiarize means Cellulose. This is a term I already mentioned to you in some other portion of this chapter itself. Anyway, once more I am telling you what is Cellulose. Cellulose, I will show an image. It is seen at the base of its body cavity. The cavity of that cup-shaped corallite. Its floor contains so many. Here in this picture is very clear. It's that cup. Inside that cup, its wall contains so many ridges. That ridges are called cellulose. Okay, cellulose. And what? Another term is there, columella. What is columella? All these cellulose comes towards the center and join to form another skeletal rigid structure called columella. It's a central skeleton. Where is that? It's a central skeletal mass. It's called columella. That two terms also you need to be familiarized. Then we are going to learn about the origin, how these corals are forming. Okay. First, in the beginning of a coral formation, first a polyp is developing. How this polyp is developing? We know that before that a planula larva is there. Planula larva moves down after so many free living period. It settles down in some substrate and give rise to this polyp. Okay, and its basal part is there. Its basal part is otherwise called cenosac. From this cenosac, actually that polyp is developing. Okay, so that cenosac is continuous with the column of that polyp. Column is this portion. Cenosac is continuous with the column of the polyp. So, planaria settle down and that planaria begins the formation of first polyp, and that polyp of that corals originate from cenosac. So, in that way, cenosac is continuous with the column. Okay, and this undersurface of cenosac is known as cenosteum. Cenosteum spelling I will tell you, Cenosteum. Cenosteum is there. And this cenosteum is actually secreting the calcium carbonate skeleton to the undersurface continuously. Okay. And young corals have only few calcium carbonates that secretion. As years and periods goes on, the thickness of this secretion increases and the size of the coral also become bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay. Okay, then the cenosac grows and gives rise to another polyp, and that polyp also secretes calcium carbonate towards its undersurface. and from again that Xenozoarch is continuing, and again another polyp. In that way, it grows in size and form a huge colony. And also in the meantime, the thickness of the coral also increases as the years pass by. Okay. Then the whole together, that xenostium and that skeleton, calcium carbonate skeleton together, here we are calling it as corella. Okay. And one more thing, as years pass by, that cellulose septa means the inside, that ridge seen inside the base part of the column. It gain more thick, and in between the theca, after it attain a certain thickness, a platform is developing. That platform is called tabula. Okay, so such type of so many platforms we can see as years periods pass by. Okay, this is about the origin of the corals. In this way, corals are forming. So we can go and watch a video. In that video, you will get a clear-cut idea about what's the appearance, how its tentacles are moving, how it taking prey, what is about the appearance, all those things. What's the significance? How fishes are hiding inside, and also along with that, in that video, you can understand that when this algae is associated with the coral, that is Zooxanthellae. If that Zooxanthellae disappears, that coral loses all its colors and appears as white. Then we call that coral is bleached one. That also we can see in the coming video. Okay, we can go and see that video.
Coral reefs are one of the most important inhabitants of shallow tropical oceans. A coral reef may look like a bunch of colorful rocks or perhaps some unusual looking plants.
All these are corals. Appearance also vary greatly, and different appearance, color-wise also so many differences are there. So it's very beautiful to see. It's a garden like it's the bottom, in the bottom of ocean. A shallow bottom. It's not found in deep regions of the ocean. Only shallow regions. They give such a beautiful, attractive appearance. It gave that that area, that ocean area. It gives such a beautiful appearance.
But it's actually a strange, primitive animal. Each coral
here you can very clearly see that polyps HOD. Polyps, these are tentacles, and each polyps are residing inside, because whenever it feels something hostile, something unfavorable for its survival, it can retract back and hide inside that calcareous skeleton.
Animal called a polyp is only about the size of a pearl. It's little more than a mouth with some tentacles around it. The tentacles are used to catch plankton to eat. Coral is closely related to another tentacle-equipped animal, the jelly. If you can imagine a small jelly stuck to the bottom that can't swim, that's a coral polyp.
Here very clearly we can see that movement of tentacles. And by using this movement, it entacles its prey.
But unlike jellies, coral polyps grow together in colonies called a coral head. This coral head has several hundred polyps. A bigger one has thousands. Beneath the living skin of the coral is a skeleton made of calcium carbonate.
This is that skeleton. So see, the undersurface beneath of this that that polyp colony.
The piece of coral is heavy like a rock because the calcium carbonate is limestone, a type of rock. This heavy limestone base anchors the colony so waves and storms can't move coral reefs. The creation of limestone is slow. It takes hundreds of years for a coral head to reach the size of this brain coral. And in spite of the fact that it looks like a brain, coral has no brain or eyes. Some corals are not hard as a rock. There are many species of soft corals. Some look like bushes or fans. These are often called
its appearance is like that fan-like appearance. So many morphologically, many different varieties are there.
gorgonians, sea whips, or sea fans. Others look like pastel works of art. Soft corals grow anchored to the bottom and look to most people like plants. But up close, you can see the coral polyps. Instead of a hard skeleton, these soft corals have tiny splinters of calcium carbonate inside called spicules. They allow the coral to bend and flex with the waves. When many coral colonies grow together, the result is a reef. It's a living, growing structure that provides nooks and crannies.
So another significance of the corals is provide that nursery for the breeding ground and also shelter for so many types of fishes.
For everything from invertebrates to fish. A reef is like the buildings in a city, providing housing and protection for thousands of animals. When a reef forms, it creates new habitat for other animals. Maybe it starts out as just a small coral head with only space for a few fish. But as it grows over many years, more and more marine life flocks to the reef until it's a thriving metropolis. Of course, all those small fish living around the reef attract larger fish like jacks, barracudas, and even sharks looking for a meal. The reef provides a foothold for algae and sponges.
This is another type of coral. It appears like tube-like. About this also we will learn later. Now this time you just give a glance at over this.
And that in turn attracts sea turtles to eat the sponges. And it all starts with just one tiny coral colony. So much life in the tropical oceans depends on coral reefs. Coral reefs can grow quite large. The largest one in the world is the Great Barrier Reef off North.
This is a great coral reef. Yeah, even if we see that it's coral because this is huge. Size-wise is very huge, and getting this much size, it takes so many years. It not be happen all of a sudden. It's not possible. It requires so many millions of years to gain this much size and range.
Eastern Australia, which is over 1,500 miles long. It's so big, it can be seen from space. Coral reefs live all around the world in tropical waters. They can't live in cold water because the coral is unable to create calcium carbonate if the water gets too cold. Unfortunately, there's not much plankton in tropical water. That's why it's so nice and clear. But at night, plankton comes up from cooler, deeper water, and that's when the coral feeds. Unfortunately, most of the time, coral still doesn't catch enough plankton to survive. So it has worked out a great partnership. Many corals have a greenish or brownish color because they have tiny microscopic algae called Zooxanthellae living in their skin. The Zooxanthellae make energy from the sun's rays. In exchange for having a nice place to live in the skin of the coral, they share some of their energy with the coral. So the coral is partially solar powered. As long as they grow in nice, shallow, sunlit water, solar-powered corals don't need to catch much plankton. This is why reefs form in shallow water. Sometimes I see coral that's turning white as if it's losing its color.
This is the bleached coral because it loses also all its vibrant colors. This is because of as it loses zooxanthellae. I've seen associated with this because of the disappearance of that algae. This that coral appears in a bleached form, bleached way, losing all its colors, everything.
This is called bleaching. When corals are subjected to environmental stress, such as high or low water temperatures, changes in salinity or pH, siltation, or even just too much sun from a really low tide, they start to turn white. This happens because the Zooxanthellae starts to die. Since corals get their color from the Zooxanthellae, when the Zooxanthellae goes away, so does the color. And if it goes on for too long, the coral dies because it needs the energy from the Zooxanthellae. Since most coral is as hard as a rock, very few animals can actually eat it. But a few can. The crown of thorn sea star dines on the outer skin of the coral. An outbreak of crown of thorn sea stars can wreak havoc on a reef. All that remains of the coral after a crown of thorns attack is a dead white skeleton. Parrotfish eat coral too. They take big, crunchy bites out of the reef.
These are all predators of these corals. They break these corals because they have strong biting teeth present for these types of fishes. So they are predators of these corals. They destroy the corals.
And grind up the calcium carbonate as they chew. The parrotfish have a tough beak that's as hard as steel for biting the reef. And the hard particles that they excrete later end up as sand on the beach. It's true, tropical beaches are made partly of fish poop. So the next time you're relaxing on a
So that's enough. It's about corals in this video. So we are going to see one more video. In that video, you will get some more important points regarding the corals. So let's see that video.
Hello friends, this is Abhinav Bhargav, and in this video we are going to see about the coral reefs. So these are one of the most important marine biological community in the whole world, and these corals are formed by huge colonies of tiny organisms which are called as polyps, and they secrete calcium carbonate mainly to form a protective crust around their soft bodies, and when they die their outer skeleton
Every points are very clear. What is corals? And corals chemically they are calcium carbonate secreted by the polyps.
remain as a platform for others to continue building these corals. So these polyps share a symbiotic relationship with a tiny single cell algae which is called as Zooxanthellae that live on the tissues of these polyps. So polyps provide home for the algae, and algae produces food and oxygen through photosynthesis. And corals get their beautiful colors from the Zooxanthellae living within their tissues. So since the algae performs the photosynthesis, it is only natural that the coral reefs are mostly found in regions where sunlight can penetrate through the waters. Also, corals require warm water and cannot tolerate long periods of sun exposure.
That's another point. Corals are usually seen in warm waters. It's very rare in cold waters. But sometimes they are found in. Very rarely they are seen in cold waters. This is an exception case.
So they are found in the shallow coastal zones of tropical and subtropical oceans. And the largest coral reef is the Great Barrier Reef near Australia. And more than half of the world's coral reefs are found in Mediterranean Sea and Indian Ocean region. And rest are found in the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, Caribbean Sea, Red Sea and Persian Gulf. In India, the corals are found in Gulf of Kutch, Malvan, Goa, Lakshadweep, Gulf of Mannar, Park Bay, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And from prelims point of view, we should know the best conditions for corals to live. 1. The water
This point you need to learn.
Temperature should not fall below 20 degrees Celsius. Second, the depth of the water should not exceed 180 feet. because beyond this depth, sunlight is too faint for the photosynthesis to take place. Third, the water should be saltish and free from the sediments. Here we should also know about what are cold water reefs. So recently the scientists have discovered that the corals are found in the depths of oceans where the temperatures are cold, and these cold water corals don't have symbiotic relationship with the algae. But the question is, how do they survive? And they feed solely by capturing food particles from the surrounding waters. And the largest cold water reef is the Ross Reef, which is in Norway. So let us see the importance. Corals perform many ecological services, such as absorbing carbon dioxide as part of the carbon cycle. They are the source of nitrogen and other essential nutrients for marine food chains. They protect the coastal zone from impact of waves and storms. They are the nurseries for hundreds of marine organisms. They are also called as rainforest of the ocean, mainly because of the biodiversity that they support. And on the economic side, they provide medicines and employment to the people. And through tourism, they also bring in valuable foreign exchange.
These are the significance. What are the values of these corals? These points also you need to by heart. It absorbs carbon dioxide as part of the carbon cycle and helps in reducing and also to storing the excess amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And also it provides a source of nitrogen. As nitrogen is an essential nutrient for the marine food chain. So it it acts as it stands as a source for nitrogen, and it protects the coastal zone from the impacts of waves. It prevents or sustain that coastal zone. That's another importance. And it stands as a nursery for hundreds of marine organisms. And it is considered as the rainforest of the ocean. Rainforests are significant. Rainforests are rich with biodiversity. So in that sense, it is considered as the rainforest of the ocean, and to provide so many medicines and give so many employment chance also is there associated with the corals. And tourism. So tourism means using these corals we can create so many crafts, and through that way it attracts the tourism to these are the significances.
And coral bleaching is one of the biggest threats to this
Bleach
species
coral.
today. These are the healthy corals and these are the bleached corals. Coral reefs are vulnerable to the damage mainly because they grow very slow and are sensitive to temperature and salinity variations. And when a reef becomes stressed, it expels the zooxanthellae, then it loses its color and food and ultimately dies. So let us see in detail about the cause of stress. Even a 1 degree rise in temperature can cause coral bleaching, and sediments that run off from the land settles on the reef prevents photosynthesis. Other major concern is
These are the reasons for, that lead to the destruction of corals.
pollution. That is urban and industrial waste, sewage, agrochemicals and oil pollution are poisoning these reefs. That is they increase the level of nitrogen in the seawater, causing an overgrowth of algae which cut off their sunlight. Overfishing and destructive fishing practices such as cyanide fishing and dynamite fishing. These affects the ecological balance of the entire coral reefs community. Next, we have coastal development in the form of careless tourism and resort building. Other major concern is coral mining, that is, live coral is removed from the reefs for use as bricks, road fill, or cement for new buildings. And next, we have corals which are sold to the tourists and to exporters who don't know or who don't care about long term damage.
Without with considering the sustainability of that corals, we are exploiting it in a view for tourism, or we are selling that corals for tourists without considering its existence. That's telling about that point. That's about this video. This is a picture showing that tabula. Tabula means partition that is formed as years, as periods, periods, or yeah, as the time passed by. That cellulosepta gains more and more thickness, and in between that basement, that core basement means that that coral part. As years pass, certain partitions are forming. That partitions are called the tabula. Okay. Next, we are going to see about different types of corals. hydrozoan corals are there. Before that, I want to tell you the environmental conditions. What are the environmental conditions that support the existence of corals? It is to some extent it is already explained along with that video. Anyway, I'm pointing one significant requirement for the existence of that corals is warm water. Warm and shallow water is necessary for the existence of corals, and that's why it is the corals are confined to continental and island shores in tropical and subtropical zones. And its a shape is also it varies large extent. Different forms of corals are found throughout the world. So we can go to learn about different types of corals. First is about hydrozoan corals. In the hydrozoa also some members are secreting these corals. Now they in the order Hydrocorallina. In that order, certain members are there. They are Millipora, Stylaster, and Disticopora. In your textbook, that names are there. So you can look for the spelling through your textbook. They're colonial and they can secrete this massive calcareous exoskeleton. In this hydrozoan corals, two types of polyps are found. Gastrozooids and Dactylozooids. And next we are going to see anthozoan corals. Anthozoan corals, they include soft and horny corals, and also at the same time hard or stony corals also possible to found in anthozoa. Okay. Next. Next, another subclass that is Optocoralia. Optocoralia, what about its appearance? Optocoralia means that its coral is of soft at the same time horny. Optocoralia, what's the peculiarity of that corals? They are soft corals at the same time horny, hard. And while studying about each type of coral, one point you need to give stress is what type of its skeleton. That point we need to mention while learning about each type of this coral. So here also we need to learn what about its skeleton. In this subclass Optocoralia, we need to familiarize with the order Alcyonium. Alcyonium. This Alcyonium is otherwise called dead man's finger because it has such an appearance. So it's called dead man's finger. And what about its skeleton? It has an endoskeleton. That endoskeleton means the skeleton is inside the body. And that skeleton is composed of calcareous spicules. Spicules means that hard substance composed of calcium carbonate. Calcareous spicules are found. And that spicules are found where it is seen embedded in the mesoglia. Mesoglia we know it is found between ectoderm and endoderm. So that is the endoskeleton, not exoskeleton, endoskeleton. This is about the endoskeleton of Alcyonium, and this Alcyonium, because of its appearance, it is called dead man's finger. And we are going to next type, that is order Stoloniferae. Order Stoloniferae, what is the significance? What about its skeleton? Its appearance, look, in this picture you can see that a certain tube-like structure. In this order, that its corallite is having the form of one tube placed over another. In that way it form one tube placed over the another, and inside the cavity of the tube is occupied by that polyp. And as that correlate is arranged in such a way, you just imagine that this is one tube, and over this another tube is coming, and between the two tubes there is a separation also there. A transverse platform. Where is it? Transverse platform also there between two tubes, and inside the cavity of the tube that polyps are located. This is Stolonifera. Then next one is order Gorgonaceae. Gorgonaceae that includes horny corals. What about its skeleton? This skeleton is consists of formed of a horny proteinaceous material called gorgonic. This gorgon is mixed with calcareous spicules. So calcareous spicules are found here also. It is not seen as free because these spicules are seen associated with a peculiar proteinaceous material called gorgonin. This gorgonin and calcareous spicules together constitute the skeleton of this Gorgonaceae. Okay, it's the polyps comes under the order Gorgonaceae dimorphic. Dimorphic means two types. Morphologically variable, two types exist there. Fan-like form is there, and also a reef coral are there. So these are the two dimorphic forms comes under the Gorgonaceae. Okay, next is order Xenothicalia, order Xenothicalia. And in this order, a single genus is present, that is Heliopora. And this Heliopora, this is the appearance, and this massive calcareous skeleton is consists of this skeleton is composed of crystalline fibers. Its skeleton is composed of crystalline fibers, and its wall has so many perforation. Perforation means small holes are there. That holes, in close view, that holes are certain cylindrical cavities. That holes are cylindrical cavities, and inside that cylindrical cavities, what is present? Polyps are present. Okay, that's a Heliopora. Then subclass Zooxanthellae. Zooxanthellae, in Zooxanthellae came the Madreporaria. Madrepora, we already learned just before this polymorphism in cylindries. Before that portion, we have learned about Madrepora. They are actually the true corals or stony corals. And they are solitary forms also there. This is about the Zooxanthellae. Next we are going to see about the fossil corals. Fossil corals means they are the remnants of the calcareous coral material secreted by the cylindrites that exist in prehistoric time. That means that cylindrites are not exist now. They are only as per the fossil record. But its corals are still existing. That type are called fossil corals. And and this fossil corals means the coral that has previously secreted by those cylindrites that existed in prehistoric time. About 5,000 species are there, means that extinct species, and among that 5,000 extinct species, about 600 fossil species are described. About 600 species studies have conducted, and some descriptions are available, and that species as that 600 species comes under three taxa. Madreporiaria and rugosa and a subclass tabulata. Madreporiaria only is the existing order among these fossil corals, and rugosa also a completely extinct order, and tableta also I think is an extinct order. And regarding each one, rugosa corals means they are solitary and horn shaped. Then tablet corals means their external skeleton are tubular form. Tubular form, that way, that form type of corals we already seen among the videos also. Such type of skeletal tubes are there. Such type of corals are comes under that order, right? Okay. They are called tablet corals. They are all fossil corals. Then fossil corals means these corals that are secreted by coelentrates that are not present now. Actually, they are extinct extinct in the prehistoric times. They are called fossil corals. Then that is about the fossil corals. Next is a very important section, coral reef. Surely every time there's questions are there for the university examination from this section. So have to learn thorough this portion, coral reef. First point is, what is coral reef? What is coral reef? Coral reefs are certain ridge or mountain of what? Of limestone, and its upper surface is near to the surface of the sea, and it is formed of calcium carbonate by the action of organisms, chiefly corals, means polyps. So that's the definition. Definition of coral reef once more. It's a ridge or mountain of limestone, and the upper surface of which means that ridge of limestone. Its upper surface is near the surface of sea and is formed of calcium carbonate. And that's calcium carbonate is secreted by the action of corals or polyps. And these coral reefs are mainly constructed by anthosovents, particularly stony corals. And regarding the type of corals, mainly three different types of corals, very, very important. Fringing reef is there, barrier reef is there, and atoll are there. Then what is fringing reef? Fringing reef, I will show the image first. This is the fringing reef. In the center there will be an island, and then a narrow lagoon will be there. Lagoon means a water filled area, and that lagoon is shallow. It's not that much deep. Shallow lagoon will be there, and then from the this portion onwards start that coral reef, and that coral reef increases in size towards this direction. So it is adding calcareous material, calcium carbonate materials, and grow its size in this direction. And that growing end is called edge. It's about the reefs and important terms. And fringing reef is such type of typical reef, having an island in the center, a lagoon, it's margined by a lagoon, a shallow, that term you need to understand, keep in mind. That's the difference. That term differentiate this fringing reef from other type of reef. So a shallow lagoon is there, and this lagoon is bordered by the coral reef, and it grows towards the sea, towards the green. And that growing edge is called growing end is called edge or front. Such type of reef are called fringing reef. Then what is barrier reef? Barrier reef is almost similar to fringing reef. Only difference is that that lagoon is very deeper. It can accommodate even a ship, huge ship. That much deep is that lagoon. Here also island is there. Then lagoon, then that coral reef we can start to see, and it increase in size and area to in this direction. Barrier reef, a greater barrier reef is an example. The Great Barrier Reef of Australia. Its size is 2000 kilometer long. Okay, and 30 to 110 kilometer wide. This is about barrier reef. Then what about atoll? Atoll is somewhat different when compared with the other two reefs. What's the main difference? Here that central island is totally lacking. There's no island. Instead, a huge lagoon is there. And this is the reef, coral reef. That coral reef surrounds that lagoon. And one more peculiarity is that lagoon, the coral reef is not continuous. In between, so many passages we can see. That is the difference. So this is atoll. It is somewhat horseshoe shaped also. That atoll. Then we are going to see the economic importance of corals. It's already mentioned to a certain extent along with the video that you just watched. I mean, few just watched one or two slides before. It provides habitat for many animals, and also it accumulate so many petroleum deposits, and it stands as a source for many indigenous medicines in South India, and many corals are used as decorative. Example, Corallium rubrum, and from this coral cement limestones are manufacturing. So it is significant in the field of building material, and it stands as a nursery for commercially important fishes, and it acts as a barrier against sea erosion and cyclones, protects the seashore. So that's about the coral reef. That way we finish this chapter. Okay, thank you.